Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So, this is 10 facts about 10 serial killers that you may not know about. Now, we all know that some serial killers are a little bit more strange than others. Some have very eclectic tastes in decor, or maybe they really loved toys and games that not necessarily should have been, for meant for a little boy. Maybe they loved Barbie dolls and they didn't really like Matchbox cars. But these are 10 little things that you didn't know about certain serial killers. So let's jump into it. Peewee Reese Gatskin, serial killer. Used to drive around South Carolina in a hearse. Yes, an actual hearse. And it had a bumper sticker on the back of it that said, "I haul dead people." Peewee Reese Gaskins. Next, John Wayne Gacy. We all know about the killer clown, John Wayne Gacy. In the basement of his house, where he buried all his victims, and underneath the floorboards of his house, and in the basement in the crawl space, some of his victims were stacked on top of each other. One this way, one this way, one this way. And he just kept on stacking them up and throwing dirt and lye on top of them until he ran out of room. In one corner of his basement, where he stacked up his victims, so many of them were stacked up and there was so much lye that the bones actually welded themselves together. And it took up to 2 years to separate the bones of one victim from another so they could be buried properly. Next, H. Holmes. H. Holmes, serial killer. He butchered, skinned, and took all the flesh and meat from the bones of his victims, and then sold the bones off to medical colleges for up and coming doctors to study. Some of his victims are still out there today, wired together and hanging in medical schools. Next, Jeffrey Dahmer. We all know about Jeffrey Dahmer. He killed some of his victims, and others he turned into what he was trying to make into sex zombies by drilling holes into their skulls and pouring acid into their brains while they were still alive. But that's not the peculiar thing about Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer used to make sandwiches and hand them out to his neighbors and to homeless people that he would meet in and around his community. Some of the meat that was in those sandwiches may have been human. Next, going out to Washington State, Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. Gary Ridgway was a weird individual. On top of being, a serial killer, a sadomasochist, and a sociopath, Gary Ridgway used to kill the women that he did, the prostitutes and runaways, and then steal the jewelry from their bodies, and then go to work and purposely put it in the women's restroom, and then wait for the women to come into the office and put on the jewelry. It could have been a bracelet, set of earrings, a necklace, whatever. It excited him immensely to see the women in his office to be wearing the jewelry of his victims. It would excite him to the point that he would go out and kill more to relieve the excitement over watching the women in his office wear the jewelry of the dead women. Gary Ridgway. Next, Robert Hansen. Do you remember who Robert Hansen is? A lot of talk out here when it comes to serial killers, but he should. Robert Hansen was an especially cruel and different kind of serial killer. He would kidnap his victims, bring them back to his home, tie them up to a metal post in his basement, gagged. Some of them he'd keep for days. Others he would keep for just a couple hours. Then he'd release them out into the Alaskan wilderness and then hunt them down like animals. And only then, after he hunted them down and killed them, could he get his satisfaction from their dead bodies. Robert Hansen hunted people. That was his sport. Next, David Berkowitz, son of Sam himself. Interesting thing about David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz has been eligible for parole since 2002. It is now 2019. 17 years now. David Berkowitz has been eligible for parole. Every single time he has come up for parole, he's either A, not gone to the parole hearing, refused to take part in it in any shape or form, or he's gone and just sat quietly until they got to the point where they were about to deliberate on his parole, and he has told them, I don't want to leave. I refuse to leave. You can't make me leave. Since 2002, July of 2002, David Berkowitz has been eligible for parole and has refused to leave prison. Next up, good old Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy. How many women did Ted Bundy really kill? Well, we know that he was convicted and charged originally with the murders of 36 women. When they came to him and they said, we now know that you've probably killed 36 women, he shyly looked away down at the floor, then looked back up at the detective and said, add another digit. When the detective asked him to clarify, he said, do you mean 37? Or do you mean 361? Or do you mean 136? Well, we're pretty sure he didn't kill 361 women. Did he kill 136? Or was he meaning that he really had 37 victims? A lot of FBI profilers believe that his real count is closer to 37. Next, Edmund Kemper. Edmund Kemper is a unique individual. Besides the fact that he was a serial killer, was a unique individual. Besides the fact that he was a serial killer, he was by far the most intelligent individual that ever was caught as a serial killer. The FBI believes there may be other serial killers out there who haven't been caught, who are just as intelligent as Edmund Kemper, but Edmund Kemper purposely wanted to get caught because he was tired of being on the run. An interesting thing about Edmund Kemper is he took the Mensa test, the intelligence test, and would complete 90% of it or better and would score almost a perfect score on it. but would refuse to complete the entire test because he did not want them to know his actual IQ. But on top of that, Edmund Kemper, while he was in prison, he wrote three textbooks. Three textbooks on psychology. And he titled the textbooks himself, and he wrote out each and every chapter of the psychology textbook. And his textbooks, those three that he wrote while in prison, are still in part used in the handbook and the training manuals for the FBI and for other law enforcement agencies who are hunting serial killers. Edmund Kemper. Next, but certainly not the least, Brazilian serial killer Little Petey murdered 40 people while in prison, and only up to 6 people to be sentenced to go to prison. Revenge. He killed 40 people in prison to seek revenge on the gang that killed his girlfriend and love of his life. He annihilated an entire gang, one by one by one, while in prison. His last victim, his 40th victim in prison, was his own biological father. He killed his own biological father in prison. Why did he do it? Because his father was serving time for killing his mother. Well, that's odd. But here's the odd part about Little Petey. Little Petey and Brazilian law says that the maximum that they could sentence him to was 30 years for all the crimes that he committed. The 6 that sent him to prison and the 40 he killed in prison. In prison, after killing his father and annihilating the entire gang, everyone looked at him as a vigilante warrior. He was released from prison. And what has Little Petey been doing since his release from prison? Well, he owns a soap company, and he is a cattle rancher, and on top of it all, he's a YouTuber. I am not kidding. He served 30 years for murder. He's a ranch hand, and he owns a soap company. And you can find him here on YouTube, on Brazilian YouTube. So that is 10 interesting facts about serial killers that you may not have been aware of. Thank you for joining me today. Stay safe out there.